Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today I have with me again Clement from Kleros. Welcome, Clement.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think it's almost been like 2 years since you came on last, but it was like sort of wild to kind of say, but would love to kind of just, for first I can ask, how's Kleros been going? I think you guys have been a little bit in the press lately. What is there anything new, I guess, at Kleros that we would want to sort of go over and we can start with?
So recently, so we are still working on V2, which is on a testnet that people can already try. We're like the last few weeks, we are doing some prediction market on the US election with Polka Market. We're gonna relaunch Proof of Humanity in a couple of weeks. Like we are deploying on the mainnet and we are doing the mainnet test just before deployment. Well, sorry, just before releasing to the general public. Some use case in TCR, still on Curate. As usual, like Kleros, it's really not like one project to do one thing. It's really a dispute resolution brick that can be plugged in a lot of systems. So it's always on one hand working on V2, and on the other hand is helping people who are integrating Kleros into their systems.
Cool. Well, yeah, let's go over kind of how it works. I'm guessing we can kind of go over V2 this time, right? See how Kleros V2 is going to work.
Yeah, V2 is going to be quite similar, except we're going to have more modularity. So people will be able to slightly tweak mechanism. So okay. Kleros is a shading coin system. So if you want to be an arbitrator in Kleros, you need to have some PNK, and you can stake those PNK in a particular court. So for example, you could have some court where you need to know JavaScript, or some court where you need to know Spanish. So you pick up your court, you put your PNK in this particular court. And now on the other side of this, you have people having arbitrable application. So that's some application which sometimes have some disputes, and they need to send those to Kleros. So let's say, for example, you have a prediction market, and you have some money at stake, and it's going to give some reward to people who predicted correctly the US election. Let's say you have the US election on Omen or whatever other prediction market. So now if people disagree on what was reported, they can create a dispute. And so now it will create a dispute in Kleros, which would be who won the US election. And now you have some juror, they will be drawn into this particular dispute. So the jurors, they look at evidence, they then vote on like the Trump wins the election or Trump did not win the election, and they cast their votes.
Yeah, I mean, if I can like slow you down a little bit.
Yeah.
It looks really good. So, I mean, we have PNK holders, and then they'll come to the staking contract, Kleros's contract, and they'll stake an amount of PNK. Is there any minimum, or is this like?
The minimum depends on the court, but basically just made to make sure people can't lose more tokens than what they have.
Okay,
so
and then I mean,
it could always happen, but we put parameters such that it's very unlikely that you end up being drawn and losing all your cases and losing all your tokens.
Cool. And then I think the other piece would be about PNK. You had kind of touched on proof of humanity. So whenever there's sort of, they would put lock tokens and say, I'm going to be a juror in the Kleros system. Do they also have to sort of do KYC through this proof of humanity?
No. Like it's really a shading coin system. So there is no KYC. At some point, we could make some V2 module where we give, let's say, we try to equalize the chances of being drawn of different people. So just if you have, let's say, one guy having 1,000,000 token and one guy having 1,000 token, the guy with 1,000,000 token doesn't have 1,000 times more chance of being drawn because Kleros works better if you have multiple different jurors compared to having the same guy drawn multiple times. So in general, we want to avoid people to be drawn multiple times. So we could set up some module like that, but that's not how it's currently work. And even if we do set up some module, it will be for particular courts who want to use this particular module. So for now, like there is no KYC, it's just a shilling coin system. You can be anonymous. You just take your tokens.
Perfect. So yeah, and then the user contract will ask who won the election, and then what it's going to do is it's going to basically draw out. It's going to pick a number of jurors to be sort of decide this. And how many jurors does it work, or is that based on the user?
So it depends on the application. You can pick one, you can pick 500. That's really depending on the application.
You would just basically have to pay for them, correct?
It's a parameter, yeah. It depends on, obviously you have to pay for each juror, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's only the initial amount of juror. So even if you want, you can pick one. It's okay, because even if you pick one, you can appeal. So they will give their ruling. And if people think the ruling is wrong, they can put some additional deposit. So they can put an appeal deposit, and then they will get another round with more jurors. So each time we will double +1 the amount of juror. And it stops either if you reach the maximum amount, but I don't even know if it was ever reached, or if it was reached, that would have been maybe like 1 or 2 times. It would have been very rare. And most of the time, at some point, after a few appeals, one side recognized that they will probably not win the case, and then they want to limit their losses, so they stop putting some appeal deposits.
Yeah.
So most
of
the time, it will be solved on the most of the time it will be solved on the first round, and then the Kleros contract is going to call back the arbitrable contract, the one you call the user contract, and then the user contracts will do whatever it is on logic. So, for example, for a prediction market, that will be distribute tokens to people who bet on the correct result, right? But it can be anything. It can be adding, removing data to curated lists. You mentioned proof of humanity. It can be accepting or rejecting a profile in a Sybil-resistant system. Anything that a smart contract can execute can be executed as a result of the Kleros ruling. And Kleros is pretty much agnostic to that. Like Kleros, you ask, okay, what is the correct answer? And then that's for the arbitrable contract to determine what to do with the correct answer.
Yeah, no, I love the system. We actually just had on Edmund Edgar, who I know you know, and he was talking about the augur system, which is sort of very similar to this design.
Yeah, because we both got inspiration from the shilling coin paper.
Yep.
No, from the no, it was not shilling coin. It was called Trust Coin, from the Trust Coin paper, which I think was the first one to invent the concept of shilling coin. Then it's Vitalik who called it shilling coin. But to the best of my knowledge, Paul Stork had set up the initial mechanism. But Paul Stork is a Bitcoin maximalist, so it never went to production. Like, he wanted to make a shilling coin system on Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is not really, let's say, prepared to do something like that. You can probably do it, but you go through a lot of hassle compared to doing that on an EVM.
Yeah. No.
So yes, you got Augur, the first one. You got Kleros. You got Yuma, I will guess so. I don't know if they make reference, but it's also heavily inspired by the Trustcon paper. And now the most recent that people are talking about will have been Eigenlayer token. Not the one with ETH, but the one with their token. So shilling coin mechanism, well, like, you don't have that many of those, but I can still find 5 which are currently operating. Well, one is Eigenlayer is not operating, but you probably have 4 systems which are currently using shilling coin mechanisms. Yeah.
No, I think the difference here, and I think we had talked about this last time. Edmund talks about how do you sort of see the ability to fork at the end of this? That piece is obviously an augur where if the system breaks, then you have the ability to fork. Do you see that as something that you guys, because you guys obviously don't have it, but then where's sort of the strength lie, or should that just be with the user contract ultimately?
Yeah, so The current Kleros, we plan to, like, that in case of attack, people could fork the system. We, for example, made a token which was easy to fork, but the forking mechanism is not in protocol. It will just be people have to coordinate outside of the protocol to fork. But then for V2, we are putting a forking module. So this means that you will have an in-protocol way to coordinate the forking. But again, like the forking system is something which normally should probably not happen, but because it could happen, it will make the system work properly, and then you don't need to use it. It's a bit like like nuclear weapons. Like in theory, you have your nuclear weapon, you need it, but fortunately, because you have it, no one is gonna attack you too much, and so you won't really need to use it.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, it's like designing a system so you never have to use it.
Yeah. In theory, you could still have cases where you have legitimate forking. And I gave this example with the Trump election because you had a minority, but a pretty, let's say, a convinced minority who are saying, yeah, like the US election was stolen, Trump won the election, it's all bullshit, the answer should not be that Trump lost the election. But maybe people in the US may have been 50-50 on this kind of topic. But people in the global world were obviously more into, okay, like the election were won by Biden. So we did not see any forking there. But would we have had a more focused community, like let's say it would just have been US people in Kleros? I think we would have had a legitimate forking here. You could have a legitimate disagreement where you actually you fork the system because you have two groups of people who have some opinions which are so incompatible that they will work better by being in two different systems than into being in the same system together and fighting.
Yeah. Can I ask you a little bit more about, I guess, how does your forking mechanism work? Does it fork the whole PNK token, or does it fork kind of at a specific user contract level?
So currently the forking mechanism in the current Kleros is something to be done like outside. That means that it's not in the protocol. So it will be, okay, Kleros has been attacked. We think this ruling was the one which was attacked. All those people were bribed. And so now we just make a copy of PNK and we remove the stake of all of those people. And that's Kleros.
Well, that would be like Kleros survives, but the user contract is still wrecked, which is kind of the problem, right?
Yeah, that's definitely the thing. Like if you fork, it doesn't solve the user contract. No.
Yeah, well, because that's like one of the things I've been wondering, like with EigenLayer, like they're adding in, say, if you want to be a user of EigenLayer and you have a smart contract, how do you use it and have the security of the forking mechanism that actually gives you any of that security? Like that's kind of the hard piece.
Yeah, so I understand why it may seem well to have a mechanism give security, while the mechanism is only, let's say, active when the security has been broken. But like again, you think about the nuclear weapon. Let's say, like if you get nuke, then you have a system which will respond to nuke back, will just nuke you, right? So okay, it will not. You may say, oh, it's only get trigger when you get nuke, but no, because people know that if they nuke you, you will nuke them back. They will not nuke you in the first place.
But I mean, like as far as this goes, like if you wanted to use Kleros, because this is the problem, like with EigenLayer or like a system like Kleros, or even using Augur as an oracle, it's like if you're going here, right, like you're listening for this result to come. Is Kleros, say, only secure then up to the amount of money within here? So like, like if there's $20 billion in here, can Kleros possibly secure that? Because even if you forked, right, like the 20 billion can still be stolen, correct? Or is that, yeah?
So that was the people at Augur try to do. They really try to say, okay, we have this amount of economic security we can provide, and they are doing some very, very pessimistic assumption. The assumption tend to be that people are purely immediate profit motivated, so they will just sell their token if someone can offer them just slightly like epsilon above market price, and that people will accept bribes. But in practice, it's not the case. So I understand the point of view of, okay, we take the worst case scenario. But if you can take the worst case scenario, for example, like you could say, okay, like that Ethereum, for example, would not work because if you manage to like look at Ethereum, look at it's for now it's secure by the stake ETH, right? And if you were to apply the same logic on Ethereum, your logic will say you cannot have more value on Ethereum than the value of the stake ETH. But you do have more value on Ethereum than the value of stake ETH. And it's working fine, right? And it's still very far from being broken from an economic perspective. And this is because of two main reasons. One of the reasons is obviously people are not just profit motivated. There is some morality with getting into that. Like if you say, oh, I will give you a bunch of money which are equivalent to the value of your PNK plus 5%. If you allow me to exploit this protocol by voting in my way, I'm not going to do it, even if I could, in theory, get more money. I have some sense of morality. So that's one point. You have some morality, and as long as the majority of the token are held by people who are acting morally, you cannot even attack the system, no matter the economic security. And this good example would be multisig. You make a multisig. In the multisig, you take, let's say, you take 10 signers, and as long as the majority of those signers, so you ask to get 6 of them, for example. So as long as the majority of the signers are acting honestly, your system works, even if you have zero economic security, because you could say, yeah, all of those people, I could just bribe them a bit and then attack the whole system. So yeah, if people were only purely profit motivated, that would be the case. But in practice, I tend to believe that most people will be honest. Most people being honest doesn't mean that you can trust everyone. Right. It just means that you may trust that most people would behave honestly. So that's one point. And then even about the economic security, one thing which is overlooked is the slippage. So how much is Kleros? Like, let's say it's 30 million. If you wanted to attack Kleros, you can say, okay, like I need to get $30 million of token, or $50 million worth of token to get the majority. But it's not the case, because if you wanted to buy for 15 million of PNK, you will already like pump the price. You will get, I don't know, maybe you will get 10% of the token or something like that, because you will really increase the price by a lot. So yeah, so you have people being honest, and you also have market depths, which means that in practice, the cost of attacking the system, if people are willing to let an attack happen, tend to be more than just half of the market cap of the shilling coin securing the system. And this is true for Ethereum. This is true for Kleros. This is true for stuff like Augur or Yuma. Like that's true for all of those shilling coin systems. And then you have this approach that has been taken by Augur. But the approach taken by Augur also has this kind of flow. So basically, the approach with Augur is to say, we look at the value that is currently secured by the system. We compare that to the value of the token of the system. And if the value of the system is too low compared to the value which is secured, we increase the fees. And by increasing the fees, that means more revenue for people in the system. So that should mean more value to the token of the system. And it means also less people using the system. So it would mean less value secure because it's more expensive, so people use it less. So that may seem smart, but the big problem with that is that people can actually do what they call parasitic market, or if we generalize that, that would be parasitic usage, which means that they could use a system where they don't report the value secured, they use the system without paying for security. They will just use the system when there is a dispute, but they will not pay for security because they will not reveal the value which is secured. Because here you look at this, you say, okay, like that's this contract which has this amount in this contract, so you can include the value which is secured. But in practice, it tends not to work like that. In practice, it tends to be more complicated because in Web3, we are all building some bricks, and you have some brick which is running on another brick, and sometimes you have multiple bricks running on the same one. Like, again, taking the Trump cases. So here I gave you a very, let's say, simplified example or you say you have a prediction market which is asking about Trump. But in practice, it was more complicated than that. In practice, so you have in the middle, you have the oracle system, which is reality. So you have an oracle question, which is will Trump win the US election? And on this oracle question, then you had two prediction markets, which were Omen and Catnip, which were relying on the same question to resolve their market. So now, if you just look at the reality and say, oh, well, the reality is just like an oracle smart contract which is answering this question. And for now, there is not even money on it. So you are not securing nothing. You're just securing the answer to this question. Yeah, but now because you have this answer to this question, you have some other contract which are making a reference to this contract, and those contract may secure some money. So in practice, it's impossible for the chain to see on chain what is the value which is effectively secured. And so you can have parasitic markets or parasitic usage. And if you use a system like Augur, such that if you have a market cap which is too low compared to what you are securing, well, what happens is people, they don't want to pay because you increase the fees. And the more fee you increase, the more people are incentivized into making parasitic usage and not paying user fees. And then you may actually end up being in practice at more risk of attack because you will have a lot of value at stake which is not accounted by your protocol.
Right. No, I think that's kind of where I got with Edmund too, was that Augur in general, like it can work very, very specifically for like almost enclosed in itself. It can work a little bit better, but then as soon as you try and like use it for anything else, or if anyone even tries to use it for something else, it like breaks the whole mechanism. If you try to use the result as an oracle, for instance. But I guess here, like, kind of along the lines, like you sort of move into this like honest majority assumption or sort of reputation based assumption, as far as where you're assuming that PNK holders will be sort of moral, and I love the idea that you sort of have some non-financialized interest in it. But like, what do you think the end game of that looks like over time? Like whenever we're having these systems, whether it's say a prediction market or if we're doing say a bridge that's asking a question, did tokens get locked over here? Where do you think the trust? What should be the trade-off between crypto economic security and reputational security?
So initially, my point was you could not really have any kind of reputational security because people are anonymous, and you really have you had no way. It was just addresses. So when we start Kleros, like any sort of reputation was really inexistent. Reputation in the common sense of the term. Some people were making a system where they had what they call reputation. That would be the house stack, for example. So the house stack had some system which could have almost been some sort of shading coin, but it was not a real shading coin because it was not a coin. It was what they call reputation, which were linked to an address. Like that doesn't really work if you link reputation to an address, because otherwise people can just sell the address. And that's actually something which did happen. I don't know if the sale was concluded, but you had Shane, who at that time was actually not famous. So Shane is not is the founder of Polymarket, but that was before he made Polymarket. He had this reputation in the house stack system, and then he was just selling the multi-sig, like the Gnosis safe, which was holding this reputation. And this caused outrage, and it also caused people to actually see that, like reputation system in the house stack sense do not work because people can just sell accounts. So if you make a reputation system in the DAO stack sense, would you just made a token system, except that the honest people can't sell their token and dishonest people can. So you are way worse than just letting everyone sell their tokens.
Right.
So that was the case before. Okay, so now there has been more development. So for example, with Proof of Humanity, where we could have some sort of reputation because you can make it such that someone can only have one address. So if you only have one address and you do bad thing, well, like you can't just send your token to another cache and use another address, because you can only, even if you can send your tokens to another cache, then you cannot use another address because you can only have one address which is verified. You also had more work done on reputation system, like by Puja, for example, on getting some soulbound NFTs, and then being able to basically make some voting system such that you get more weight if people from multiple backgrounds are voting for one proposal, compared if one proposal tend to be voted by all people from the same community. So she made some work on that. So you could have system like that. You could have system which may use some form of reputation, because reputation is now being created. The issue with those kind of reputation system is obviously that they can be more sensitive to censorship and governmental intervention. Because if you are like if you are doxxed, like the government can say, hey, like vote this way, otherwise I'm going to put you in jail. Fortunately, that's not something which I've ever seen happening. But that's something that could happening, because when you have millions at stake and you lost a dispute, well, even if you think you're probably going to lose in court, you can say, yeah, I can pay like $100,000 worth of lawyer fees and get a 10% chance of getting 2 million. That's worth it. So some people are probably going to try to use legal system sometime when they lose cases. We haven't seen that happening. We haven't seen any proof of this happening. We had some people who threatened to sue others, and you had some people who say they were suing others, but I haven't seen any proof. But it's possible that it will happen at some point. So they're having anonymous actors make it quite resistant against potential state interference, like which will like threaten juror and force juror to vote in a certain way. So that's one reason of being anonymous. But that's also really kind of particular kind of use cases where, like if you are doing prediction market, probably if you are doing stuff which are, let's say, less touchy, government probably not gonna care about your dispute about whether you are a real human in proof of humanity or not.
Right. Yeah. No. Thanks for answering that. One of the other sort of disputes I wanted to go into was not necessarily the whole securing large amounts of crypto economic value, but like just on, I know Kleros sort of pushes itself as like a dispute resolution mechanism. Like the classic example, I guess, like let's say you had this was a DAO contract and it was supposed to pay somebody out, but there was a dispute whether or not they did the work, and you wanted to use Kleros to sort of settle it. How do you sort of see this? How do you sort of see Kleros adding benefit there in the sense that, like, have you found that people sort of accept the resolution of Kleros, and like, does Kleros have sort of the niche expertise within the system to sort of resolve those pieces?
So you will already have some people losing dispute and being unhappy. So that's normal in any dispute resolution system. But the advantages of using Kleros compared to using your own system is that you have a real, let's say, judicial process. Like you have people providing memo, the answer to each other, so you can really make your voice heard. So at first, you get heard in the process, which would not be the case in like Web3 kind of process. I had dispute on Airbnb. I had 2 disputes. I won one, I lost one. And I have no idea why I won and why I lost. I just wrote stuff. At some point, I could not even know if I should write stuff in English or write stuff in French. And I lost the one where I was writing in French. So I don't even know if I lost because my arguments were wrong or if just the guy who reviewed my dispute did not speak French because it was a rental in France. So so first, at least you have some transparency about the process. Second, you have some people who tend to be independent from the application itself. So if you are using classic dispute resolution system, they will be the one operating this particular system, this particular rental platform. So they are not independent. They may have a particular agenda into saying, okay, like The buyer side is a bit harder to get. The seller side is easy to get. So there may be bias toward the buyer, for example, things that you will not really get in Kleros. You have an appeal system. So you know if you are wrong, you can risk more resources to get your case reviewed again. So if you are unhappy, you already have a straightforward way to say, hey, here I think there was a mistake, and you want to show why it was a mistake and get it corrected. And often, like you often have result switching after appeals. So it's often that appeals are actually relevant. So you have like a transparent process with independent jurors, and you have the ability to get more processes if you think that what you currently got was wrong.
Awesome.
And also it's fast, like compared to the classic system. Like I'm here in Portugal, like at some point we had a lawsuit, it took like 3 years or something. We won it, but it took 3 years for it to settle, which was pretty pretty long. Like here you go into Kleros, and even if you were to use all the appeals, maybe it would take you 2 months at maximum. Maybe if you had like 8 appeals or something like that, in practice most of the time it will be settled within a week or 2.
No, that works great. Because I think that's like something that a lot of DAOs and systems still, they kind of, even like being an Oracle here at Teller, like one of the biggest like competitors is like basically just the user doing it themselves, like saying like, well, we'll just be our own Oracle, or we'll just be our own sort of support mechanism. And it seems like kind of like you were saying, like having a third party actually makes a difference when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's also the same for Kleros. Like sometimes you had some project which may try to compete or really compete on a very particular niche, but the biggest competitor to Kleros is not another project. It tends to be internal teams, because often internal teams, they want to do the stuff themselves. But if they do that, not only like they are creating something which is not their core focus. Like first, we spend a lot of time into making good dispute resolution system, and it's not just about the economy. It's also about having clear rules, having clear processes on how to interpret those. So that's something which is not trivial to do and to do well. And also, like they're not independent. They will always be accused to favor a particular kind of ruling depending on the need of their business, even if it's true or not.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I think, one of the pieces I wanted to ask, this was kind of a harder piece when it came to like, what are some of the best practices for the user contract here? So like this comes into play whether you're using an Oracle or whether you're using EigenLayer, which has a dispute resolution at the end. Like it seems like there's this inherent trade-off between security in the system and then the ability to censor it by like kicking it off to a dispute or a jury and making the whole system like locked for a month or a week or 2, depending on the cost. How do you sort of tell users, okay, what's the cost to kick this off versus, allowing the system to move quickly?
Yeah, so it's quite funny that sometimes in the crypto space, when we say, hey, like a dispute can take up to 2 months, they're like, oh, it's too long. While it's like a 10x improvement compared to classic systems already. And not like they want a dispute to take 3 days. You can't get a serious dispute resolution system giving ruling in 3 days. Some system is gonna see themselves targeted, and yes, you are targeted. I'm talking about you, Yuma. Because you have no way to seek for evidence, to put your arguments, to respond to other people's arguments in such a short period of time. You don't need 3 years to do so, but you can't do that in 3 days. And a lot of Kleros disputes would have had a wrong result in 3 days, but got what, according to me, are correct results after 1 or 2 rounds of appeals. So you have a trade-off between speed of dispute resolution and security. But the speed of dispute resolution is not the speed of your system in general. Most of the time, there is no dispute. So the dispute is the edge case. And accepting that in edge cases, things can be a bit slower, you should do that. Like you should not lower the security of your system because you want to advertise, oh, we solved everything in 3 days. That's probably not a very good trade-off for that. And if you want to avoid unnecessary losses of time, you can just ask high deposit. You can say, hey, you can do this dispute, but no, like it costs you 10 ETH of deposit to do these disputes. And so people will only have disputes when they already think that something wrong happened.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely agree. Slow your stuff down. It's usually a good option for people. Okay, and then I think one of the last questions I had would be, how's Kleros thinking about going cross-chain? How would I use Kleros on any of these number of chains that are popping up? And
yeah, so we already have some bridges for some particular use cases. So on Unity chain, for example, and we are starting to support more chains for Oracle question with reality. So as soon as someone is asking us they want to use Kleros on another chain, we just set up a bridge for this chain. Obviously, as long as they are EVM, because I don't have non-EVM engineers at my disposal. So yeah, so if you're on another chain, we can set up some bridge for that. And in V2, we are working on having the main Kleros and rollup with a specific interoperability project, which is VIA, where the idea is that it's an optimistic bridge. So this means that most of the time, you have a ruling going on the main Kleros network, which can be a rollup, and then someone just report it on the network where it should be executed. And there is not even any communication between those networks. No, there is no communication most of the time.
Nope.
And it's only if someone make a wrong report, then you will have what you call like a computational dispute. So you can see that in the computational disputes in the sense of optimistic rollup, for example. And then now you are using the underlying bridge to check who was right and who was wrong. But so this way you don't need to wait or to pay fees of the underlying bridge. You only need to wait and pay fee of the underlying bridge if someone is ready to put a deposit to report a wrong result. And this deposit will be lost. So the fee to use a bridge can always be recouped from the deposit of someone who reported a wrong result.
You guys are building a rollup though?
And sorry?
You're building a rollup, is that what I heard? For Kleros?
There is a bot which is automatically relaying the answer from one platform to another, yeah. And that's VIA.
VIA?
VIA. VEA.
VEA. Awesome. Yeah, and then I guess the optimistic piece, and then you fall back to the native bridge, I'm guessing, or if there is a native bridge.
If someone contests what was reported, and here like it's completely everything is objective. It's not Kleros-like. It's completely objective. You can look at what's happening on one platform and one happening on another. And if someone were to report a wrong result, you just challenge it. It goes through the underlying bridge. It takes time. Like sometimes it can take a week. If you are using optimistic rollups, and then you are guaranteed to get the right result. And the cost of using the bridge would have been paid by the person who put a wrong deposit. But again, because of that, in practice, people should not put wrong deposit because they know that they will just lose them. Or maybe they want to delay some execution. Okay, maybe you lost your case, you are very annoyed, and you're ready to pay 1 ETH to make the other party receive their payout a bit slower. But most of the time, it just gets done like very fast.
Cool. Yeah. And all right. So what did I miss in the system? Where didn't I touch as far as the V2 system goes?
No, I don't think you already missed anything.
Okay. Cool. No, this was great. I think. Yeah. What's I guess next for Kleros? I guess mainnet V2, and then where are you guys thinking? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, so mainnet V2, more integration. Now we're also working with Clement on solving a lot of let's say Web2 use cases. Well, even if they are let's say a crypto bank, they have a lot of Web2 kind of disputes. So we also have that which is starting to pop off. And it's always like we are making dispute resolution bricks. And that's whatever people want to use those bricks for. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and then I think, kind of like we'll do a controversial final question. Like what would be one of the reasons that somebody couldn't, or let's say like Eigenlayer wanted to build a Kleros style service where everything was, they're answering their own subjective queries as far as like whether this happened, and they're using restaked. Would that be a good system or a bad system? And what would be sort of the pros and cons versus Kleros?
So I think Eigenlayers is mainly targeting what they call something intersubjective, which is basically objective but cannot be known by the chain. So it's slightly different. Where Kleros, we have a wider range of questions we can answer. Eigenlayer, it's mainly like, okay, like you want to see some data is available, and you may have like a program running in the background doing those things. While Kleros is really focused on having humans answering questions, not programs. But yeah, like if you want to use something which is find if some data is available, using an automated system is probably going to be easier than using a system where you actually need to ask people to look if data is available, because you can do that without humans. So you can save on cost of having only bots doing that. So yeah, like if your thing is so easy that even bot can get it, maybe just have a system which can still be some sort of sharing current system, but using bots instead of human jurors. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I love the answer. But anyway, all right. Well, I guess where can people find out more about Kleros and about you?
Yeah, well, Kleros.io. You can look there. You can follow us on Twitter. For me, I'm on Twitter at Lesaege. So C like Clement and Lesage like my name. And now we are all in the French election prediction markets. So if you are trying to predict French election result, you can come and look there.
Are you guys actually securing a French election prediction market right now? Or?
It's a play money prediction market on Forland.
Okay, and do you see many disputes happening on this one coming up?
It depends. Like I think France is in general still more like pacific in terms of politics compared to what happened in the US. But you never know. Like we can have a Trump case in France. I hope we won't, but it's obviously possible.
Super cool. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.